Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all the ships to see. Are we live? Yes, we are live once again. How's everybody doing today on this Wednesday, July 1st, 2026? And it's a little overcast here, as you can see, at our secret undisclosed location on Newport Harbor, Newport Beach, California. And guys, I wanted to do something kind of uniquely American to show you how much I appreciate my audience. And here's something you may or may not remember from your childhood. Ladies and gentlemen, Yankee Doodle. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you believe the applause? God, oh man, I swear I must have outdone myself and managed to hit the button twice. So anyway, that's and who has anybody not done the and pulled it out and called it macaroni? I'm sure everybody's got their own version of a Yankee Doodle, but I know, but right. Anyway, just thought I'd give you a little trying to find a little bright spot today. And if you're up to it, give us a call at 949-629-3820. We'd love to hear what your plans are for the 4th. And what we really want to know is how you're feeling this 4th. Everybody knows by now it's the 250th anniversary of the country. And I want to talk a bit about that before we get into other things. But as you know, 250 years is a decent amount of time. I mean, at least over here, European times, thousands of years, hundreds, doesn't matter. But so we've been around 250 years. And we're in a place now we have never, ever been. Our civil liberties are under assault daily. The government itself is under attack from within by the Trump administration. We've seen these ruthless, senseless cuts all through the government that have done nothing but hollow out the government, make us more inefficient, or make it. Well, I'd like to think we were pretty efficient before this started. I don't think there was a whole lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government. If there was, I mean, you're always going to have some, just because it's there's no real ownership interest in administering the financial aspects of governing. Uh, but what I want to say is, and kind of lead into ask you is, how's everybody feeling? Do you feel like our better days, our best days are ahead of us? Or do you feel like our best days are behind us? Do you have a positive outlook going forward? Any conditions on that? And we'd like to know because uh, I look around and I don't know what there's exactly to celebrate. And there's the fact that we are lucky enough to be in the U.S. and largely separated from a lot of international problems. Zelensky talked about the two nice oceans separating us from our enemies. But the truth of the matter is, geography is almost ancient anymore. We can attack somebody with the flip of a switch, with a keystroke. Uh, and what you have is a guy who's trying to order keystrokes, but he doesn't know how to type. And I heard the other day, I saw the other day, that he cannot understand for the life of him why there aren't more people at the Great American State Fair and at his rally and this and the other. And here it is he's just a basically unlikable guy who, poops on everybody, sells everybody out, and then he wonders why he's treated like somebody who poops on everybody and sells everybody out. I mean, it's no more than the chickens coming home to roost, or chickens doing whatever it is they do. He irritates people to start out with, and then he claims he's being persecuted or they're not being fair to him. Well, bite me, Donald. I mean, we've kind of had it by now. At this point, we know you're just a greedy, worthless con man who somehow miraculously came up with enough votes in the electoral college in 2016, and who just lied through your teeth to get through in 2024. And by the way, let's make a little pit stop at 2026. America realizes that you have been lying about this going on 6 years. It's called the big lie. Everybody knows it. That's why your events aren't well attended. It's because you're not popular. People don't like you. Okay. If you were likable, trust me. If you made some effort to get along with people, great. But you don't. The truth of the matter is, you're 80 years old and clearly on the downhill slide. And while everyone clearly understands, feathering your nest for retirement, this is absurd. You've made at least $1.4 billion this year, and that's just according to what the filings show. I mean, how much you really conned your friends out of? $250 million for the ballroom, maybe a little more, because you're not going to spend any of it. You're just going to swindle like you do everything else and everybody else. Need I remind you about the Trump watch that got shipped and somehow they left the T off, and the fine Swiss-made quality was traced to a P.O. box in South Dakota. I have a 4-page readout of Trump's business failures. But yet, the con is that he's a business genius and nobody can fix it but him. And the truth of the matter is, nobody can break it like him. No president has, and not even a president, I don't think there's ever been anyone in history that took over a country and just started alienating allies through a punitive trade policy clearly designed to consolidate power in the presidency. And, I appreciate political theory as much as anybody. And I appreciate this unified executive theory that these conservatives and Republicans have been floating since probably Nixon. And the unitary executive says that if it falls under the executive branch, then the executive ought to have the final say-so over it. Well, that sounds well and good in school, but you look at these federal agencies that need independence, and we'll pick on the Fed for one. And these guys produce economic reports and God knows what, and they need some independence. They don't need to know that if the report doesn't show a favorable uptick in jobs, that they're going to get fired. And that's really devastating these days. Everybody knows how tenuous lives can be. A missed paycheck here or there, and you can lose your house or car, whatever you might have. And it's this constant application of pressure. He does this daily. And just out of curiosity, guys, does anyone, whenever he was trying to sell himself, I guess he did sell himself as the tweeter in chief, or the chief twat, or chief twit, or chief, and now he's like the now he's responsible for the ironic naming of his social media platform as Truth Social. I think that truth is one of those highly subjective words. But anyway, back to the fact that nobody likes Trump, and he ought to be able to sense that he sees the thin crowds. He's not completely stupid. He knows that if people like you, they'll show up, and if they don't like you, they don't show up. It's just that simple. If they like you, they applaud. If they don't like you, they don't applaud. And Trump ain't getting any applause these days. And everything's just coming home to roost when, a couple months before the midterms. And come November 2nd, it's just not adequate or sufficient to win. And I made up this little thing the other day, and I'll go ahead and share it again with you now because I thought it was kind of cute, and it got the message across. And it's pretty accurate. Tell me what you think. We'll beat them so hard they'll be screaming for mommy. They were expecting a blue wave and got a blue tsunami. So that's the name of the game, guys. From here on out, to overcome this soundproof chamber that he's in, and that's probably the best way to think about this. He's in a soundproof chamber where he completely controls the message, what comes in, what goes out. And as I was looking up motivations of narcissistic personalities, and one of this thing was a need of constant positive reinforcement. And, just to show you the corresponding check mark, I think he has a young, or relatively young for him, 34-year-old assistant. I think her name was Natalie Harp, whose job is to follow him around and print out positive stuff all day. And you can imagine that sometimes on some days there just might not be a whole lot of positive stuff about that orange tinged subhuman creature that's currently occupying the White House. Some days there's ain't much to say good about. There's never anything good to say about him. But in the far reaches of the internet, you'll find God knows what, the Daily Intergalactic Happiness Guide. How about that? The Intergalactic Daily Guide, the Daily Intergalactic Guide to Positive, whatever it is, and she'll print it out. Oh, look, they love you. They love you. You're great. And he looks outside over at the at the mall across to the Lincoln Memorial, and he can see from the White House that ain't nobody home. You know, ain't nobody home at the state fair, the great American state fair that only you could put on. And furthermore, not only are you the only one that can do anything that tasteless. Actually, you've done a lot of tasteless things. It's probably good. I wonder what the most tasteless thing we could accuse you of doing. I guess would have to be the Oval Office. Yeah, the gold stuff, and not to mention that the walkway of presidents, where you give your personal critique. Donald, it's just another indication of your illness, and frankly, how pathetic of a creature you are. I mean, there's no. You accuse if I heard Biden crown family one more time and Hunter Biden's laptop, and you guys are backing up convoys of trucks, of 18 wheelers to the Treasury, and just having them shovel full money and just take it away. I mean, 1.4 billion when you're not supposed to profit in any way from the presidency, and don't hand this. Oh, I've stepped away, Donald. At this point, we know you. Everybody knows you. You lie constantly. Nothing you say has any. Matter of fact, the Ayatollahs in Iran have more credibility than you have. If there's a conflicting report that says Trump says Iran committed to daily nuclear inspections, who would you believe? And Iran says, we didn't agree to that. Who would you believe? Who has more credibility? Isn't that a shame? The Iranian Ayatollah has more credibility than the orange tinged subhuman creature inhabiting the White House. Just staggering, isn't it? Had anybody, think about what just happened in Iran since we're talking about that. When he bailed, and when actually, you know what he did? He didn't bail. He conceded victory to Iran. You've got us. I just want to go. What do you want to let me go? And Iran had pretty much a free hand to tell them what they wanted. The reconstruction money, $300 billion. Now, how in the world is that better than the $1 billion from Obama? I'm still waiting to hear. I'd really like to hear an address from the Oval Office about all this. Or I would set up another Kristen Welker interview, and when she tries to fact check him, I would. Matter of fact, see, that would be the kind of thing I would pay for. I might not pay for a UFC human cockroach cockfighting match or fight or entertainment or whatever they call it is on the White House lawn. But damn, if I would pay to see Kristen Welker take it to Donald Trump in another fourth right interview. I mean, the reactions he had were priceless. I got to tell you this one. So she's asking him for evidence of voter fraud, I think it was, because everything's a hoax or fraud, right? And so she says, I'm like, but sir, where's the proof? And she says, we have plenty of proof. We'll bring it in court. And she says, I'm like, well, you had 60 times. You still didn't bring it out in court. How do you know this is true? And he says, I know it's true. I know what my people tell me, and I know what I see. So, so his truth is what his people tell him it is. So in his world, he must be everybody's favorite president. He doesn't have to keep telling them if he's, hunky dory. We should know that, right? Uh, but the guy just can't. He's 80 years old and just stuck. At this point, I think everybody would agree he's pretty much a largely gone, mentally decrepit 80-year-old man who can perform once every now and then when called on. But he's largely non-functioning. I mean, what president with a functional brain, when things are this tight politically, when you have like a 1 or 2 seat majority in the Senate, I'm talking about, what sort of president would go behind closed doors and yell at those guys in any way, shape, or form and threaten them that unless they do X, he's not going to do Y? And I mean, this isn't just coercion. When ask the people that have had Department of Justice investigate them at the urging of the Attorney General Todd Blanche, who's a real piece of work too, isn't he? Guys, this is just to show you how wild it is. He and the other Trump attorney from the fraud trial, Emil Bove, who's now a federal judge, on an appellate court, I think, somewhere. They had some sort of an understanding where, if a court decision came down that wasn't favorable, they just weren't going to obey it. And, that's, to me, that's not any different than undermining the country and treason and all that. And these guys, like I say, he's going to be up for Senate confirmation. And how the idiot that's the temporary director of national intelligence. It's just, and we are, and let me tell you what makes us sad and really mad at you, Donald, is you don't hire people or you don't get people to work for you according to competence or intelligence. You could care less about how well something functions as long as you control the functions. And that's why we have flunkies from the Department of Justice in DC down to the local prosecuting attorney. It's an unbroken line with these guys. And you can believe it or you can believe it not, but it's there. And the only tool we have at our disposal is the vote. And the vote, again, is the characteristic of democratic societies. And say if anybody's welcome to chime in on this, give us a call at 949-629-3820. Hear what your thoughts are about democracies and all that. But anyway, democracies are, they're going to be messy. They're going to be, and they're designed to be inefficient. And that's why you don't have businesses running the GAO, the Government Accounting Office. Jefferson's idea was to always have people in there that were turnover, but that would be supportive and neutral, just employees. And it was like that until until Newt Gingrich and came along. I think that was like 1992ish. You'd had Rush Limbaugh and the feminazis and all this stuff, but Gingrich was the first guy to bring that sort of me versus you hostility to or adversarial positioning to Congress. And you see where we are now. It's gotten, and let's be honest with everybody. As a general proposition, there's only one side that promotes violence in this deal. And geez, do you think it just might have some bearing on January 6th? How about paying those guys? How about even the notion of of paying the, bad enough they got pardoned. I mean, people died. People died. And it's not they just died and, by out of drive-by. This is in the United States Capitol building. This is, this is us. And these chuckleheads broke in, did God knows what. And gee, do you think we know why they did it? Well, it's pretty much beyond the shadow of a doubt that it was Trump's speech on the mall that morning. January 6th was just a real low point in American history, and believe it or not, we've sunk even lower. At that point, Trump just gave us a taste of what he was willing to do for power and the lengths he was willing to go to. And guys, there's not, and like I said, we cannot forget his enablers in D.C. You think those SNAP food cuts wouldn't have gone through without John Thune in the Senate, Mike Johnson in the House? How about those people, those women that may not have medical care in the rural areas, or the kids? Or how about elderly people? I mean, you get in some of those western states like Montana and Idaho and all that, and I mean, there just aren't a whole lot of big cities. They are largely rural. I think Maine's largely rural, and people really depend on that stuff. And because the side effects of, or the economic side effects and implications of COVID, we had to run, we had to charge a lot to keep the economy afloat for 2 years. And, you can bitch and moan about how this governor handled it, how that governor handled it. But let me let you know a little secret. The first thing is Donald. If Donald Trump's go-to guy for diseases is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think we can pretty much dismiss him as knowledgeable in any way. But my point is, and it's not unlike the LA wildfires out here, the Brentwood fires and Malibu, and sometimes it just so, sometimes it just takes a while to get your feet wet. I mean, who is really great at their first pandemic, or their first emergency, or their first this, that, and the other? Uh, I know that no matter what, I think California did the best job possible. I think Gavin Newsom was a super leader through this. And to my mind, he's still the only one who's actively taking it to Trump, even though I know he's paying a price now, and I hope there's nothing that comes up that is untoward with him or his wife. And people are free to criticize Gavin Newsom all they want. Some old guy I know was criticizing Newsom because another Chevron refinery closed, and made the gas supplies in California that much kind of restrictive. And what happens when you restrict supply and demand's the same? That means the price goes up. And has California made life difficult for lots of businesses with their environmental concerns? Of course. But on balance, and this is another huge concept that I keep coming back to, is you cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes, if you get 80 to 90% of a deal, you take it and be happy. Is it a perfect world? No. Which I'm going to quote my mother again. After she would say, "Well, bite me, pal," she would quote Sarah Palin. And I'm sure you remember Sarah Palin, the John McCain running mate against Obama. Anyway, my mom's favorite Sarah Palin quote, and she was a Democrat, but was "Suck it up, Buttercup," and that's and you'd like to tell that to somebody like Trump, just suck it up and move on, but the guy can't. And you know why he can't? Because he's mentally incapable. He does not have the tools. I mean, he was really lucky to know the tiger from the elephant on the cognitive test. I mean, how much more of a ringing endorsement as to someone's mental state would it be, other than a cognitive test where he's recognizes an elephant as being different than a tiger or a lion or whatever the case may be. I tell you, and but no matter what, the guy still the most dangerous place in the United States is still was and will be between Donald Trump and a dollar. If you disagree, give me a call 949-629-3820. Or if you see things my way, I could always use a little positive reinforcement. I do think that, and let's kind of back up to the July 4th coming up. Clearly 250th birthday and all that. But the 250th birthday of July 4th, 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Well, don't forget, this was all basically 13 colonies. I mean, what did any of the inland places, inland states, countries, territories really know about July 4th from, does it mean that I guarantee you it means something different in Atlanta, Georgia than in Savannah, Georgia. I now my hometown, Charleston, South Carolina. I know people whose ancestors have signed the Declaration and the Constitution, for that matter. It's a really historical place. And July 4th, 1776, you can still see it. There's still markers. And if you want to, speed up a few years to the Civil War, Fort Sumter's still there in the harbor. The cannons are still lined on the battery. Fort Sumter and you can see how Fort Sumter and Fort Moultrie perfectly guard the harbor. We saw that every day. So I think that July 4th means something different. And to make democracy, or to make our democracy survive and thrive, I think what we have to do is get everyone more or less invested in this notion that um, that you were there as much as we were. The fight was different, but it was a common beginning, and I think that just having that common beginning point is really helpful for a country, for society. I mean, you can honestly say we declared our independence on that day. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but not everyone wanted to secede from England. I mean, lots of local Charleston people, they had it pretty good. Usually, if you came over right away, you had a little money or a little something. You weren't. It wasn't like Georgia where they started as a debtors' colony or anything. I mean, this was, this was substantially different. So anyway, so you've got so July 4th and 250th birthday, and as I look around, or as we look around, what's going on? Do we have to feel good about and celebrate? Well, of course, I had to use my favorite source, the New York Times, and just kind of see what was in the headlines today. And who did this? How about this? Oh, this I want to point out on this article. This was the dateline was Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So this was somebody who more than likely knew what was going on, and it was that Oman and Iran appear closer to planning fees to use the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you can call it what you want. It's a fee, it's a toll, it's a tax. And you know what it is? It's money. It's money, money, money. And you know what? It's money that Iran did not have flowing in before. Did they? Or how about Oman? I mean, those guys all have a good bit of oil, but, how about a little more? And oh, by the way, not only are they talk about charging, tolls to get through. And didn't we hear no tolls, no tolls, no tolls? Well, if there are tolls, we're going to collect them. They're going to be for us. Well, Donald, I think they just told you to, kind of, go try and procreate with yourself. I think that's what they are telling you with your demands. And I hope you might have to have Natalie Harper show you a picture of somebody trying to procreate with themselves. But that's yeah. So let's say I really want this Oval Office address. You've got to explain this victory to me. If there's something for me to be proud about as an American, goddamn, don't keep it a secret. Let me know. Uh, but I think we all know how the story always ends the same way. Uh, you know, Trump gets money and walks away scot free. Uh, I do think that if we have a big enough blue tsunami, that more Republicans will start jumping off ship during that lame duck time, and that life will change substantially without a majority in either house. At least we really hope so. I mean, those guys just enabled it. How they go back home, how the Republicans in Congress go back home and play and plead to be reelected, I just don't know. What do you say to the person who got thrown off Medicaid? I'm sorry. Oh, well, I can't afford my son's dialysis and my husband's chemotherapy. I guess we just die. And that's how much they think of you and me. We're just, we're not even assets anymore. We're liabilities. The sooner he gets rid of, regular people like us, just think, he'll have really total control then. And guys, doesn't that really scare you? Uh, doesn't the notion of your lunatic granddad uh, having his finger on the nuclear warhead codes a little worrying? I mean, I'm going to tell you at this point, it would not surprise me one bit in the world if Putin launches a nuke or Trump launches a nuke. Trump would do it to be remembered, and Putin would do it because he doesn't want to be forgotten. Both sides of the same coin. Uh, the Ukraine deal, God, we blew that. And, I know, I think President Biden was genuinely conflicted. I wish he would have come down on the side of more weapons quicker and better. And, I wish he just opened the arsenal to Zelensky. But you have a situation with Biden where he was being advised by the finest minds, certainly in the country, if not the world, with knowledge as to the situation at hand. And you see, that's what makes Trump so dangerous. You may not have liked Biden's decision, but you can guarantee it pretty well. Guarantee that it was well reasoned and well thought out. And keep in mind, how does Trump make his decisions? Does he, I don't know, read a few briefs, a few articles, and call people in and chat and see what their thoughts are? And is he going to chew it, or is he just going to go ahead, do it? And I think that's kind of how the Iran war started. His guys are saying no, 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 and he's like, go ahead, do it, and they did, and here we are, from February 28th to July 1st. And if you can please tell me what we won, I'm so waiting to hear about this. Uh, and I'm sure it has something to do with the missing 45,000 people, or 40. I'm sure there was only 44,000 missing because there was probably 1,000 people in the mall at any given point in time. Uh, but you see, we've come to a point where Donald Trump's lies really do have major implications. Before in his first administration, there were people around him that said no. Now, if you don't say yes, yes, boss, and yes, boss, and can I please kiss your behind, there's no other voices around. And think about that. There are no other voices around. Whenever I talk to labor leaders or even management, I keep telling them, you may not like the union, but without the union, you guys have the only voice in the room, or the only voice, period, and that's just not very fair. And I think that one thing that makes people feel really lousy this birthday, this 250th birthday, is the fact that that it's not fair anymore. We've seen Trump get special treatment time after time after time. And how about the no audit deal with the IRS and the slush fund and all this? I mean, it's just so it just reeks. I mean, corruption beyond compare, and this is the stuff we can see. How about the Trump sons getting in on the rare earth deals from wherever? Uh, we're better than this. That's the real problem. Difficult for me to swallow. Is we're better than this, but for a few people who got conned, we wouldn't be in this position. But the truth of the matter is, every Republican and every person, every independent, every whatever who voted that way is absolutely, positively, 1000% responsible. And I'm sure you saw the woman on CNN a while back, and they were interviewing her about her feelings about Trump this time. And they asked her something like, how many times did you vote for Trump? And she says something like 3 times. I must be an idiot. And well, I don't want to, put too fine of a point on that, but I think you're probably on target. I think you are probably an idiot who couldn't tell or didn't appreciate when you were being lied to, just deceived, taken, and yeah, I mean, it's clearly sad. And which leads me to kind of another thing. And I'm going to ask you up here on a podcast to chat about how we make democracy endure. And I'm going to make that a little smaller. And I'm going to make that, how do we make our democracy? How do we keep our democracy going? And of course, you have to take a long term view and a short term view of things. In the short term, it's just more voter engagement. It's and not everyone has ideal childhoods where parents can explain things to children, and but at some point, and we all know parents start with do it because I said do it, and you're like, and that's not good enough anymore. It's got to be so that you should do it this way because the more you do it this way, the easier it'll be, and it'll give you skills to use for something else. Uh, and when you foster that sort of cooperative relationship, then the door is open. And when I say cooperative, I mean kind of like a two-way street. Then the door comes open for other choices. And you can say that, way back when, the caveman with the biggest, club was the ruler. Because he would just, kill everybody with his giant club, right? Or there might be a ruler that was conceived or was born under a uniquely full moon or during a solar eclipse or whatever, and it was interpreted as being that he's that whoever this person is a divine being and is meant to rule us. And eventually you can get into like the first or second grade where kids start going to elementary schools, and I don't know what point they start having class presence and all that. Uh, but at some point in that elementary school growing up development, by the way, this is developmental childhood that I'm clearly not an expert on. I've got some general understanding, but as a general proposition, that's all I can give you is generalities. Uh, so you've got these kids that will learn that you have these groups and tribal councils, and they'll be exposed to courts and juries, and how the 12 people get together, how the judge, he is in charge of running the trial, where the defendant gets to say, to defend himself, he gets to give his side of the story. And don't forget, all that stuff is a huge civilizational accomplishment. Way back when, like what, 1400s, they would have, or maybe it was before that, the court of the Star Chamber, and courts were held in private. And, you'd have a dispute, and that you would be summoned, and you may never be heard from again. And at that point, it's just tyranny, right? And you can see how much Trump wants to be a tyrant. I mean, he just everything, every ounce of his being is about money, power, and control. Every ounce of that. And I'm including all those cajillion McDonald's cheeseburgers and Diet Cokes that are clearly only that only people with godlike constitutions can have that much stuff and still be the physical specimen at 80 that his enablers claim him to be. And again, you see, there's no independence or allegiance to the job. The doctor isn't there to do the best job he can do. He he's there to repeat what Trump says. That's why Trump cannot understand why, if he says there's 45,000 people at the on the mall for the fair, that everybody in his administration doesn't say, well, there's 1,000 people at the fair, or 45,000 when they just repeat his line. And I think the truth of the matter is everybody's just tired of this, and it's not a happy birthday for lots of Americans, and it's not happy because of largely one person, uh, Trump, and by definition his MAGA followers. But those guys have just destroyed the government and asked us to like them. That's the insane part to me. You had Elon Musk with a chainsaw in the Department of Government Efficiency, and it was like with complete disregard to the utter humanity that those agencies represent. And if I'm not mistaken, Elon Musk filed a suit against California Representative Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna asserted that over 500,000 kids died as a direct result of Elon Musk cutting or elimination of USAID. And Ro Khanna doesn't. These guys don't make things up. You know, Trump makes them up, and when you confront him, he gets mad and calls you names like he did to Kristen Welker. Yeah, Trump. And by the way, I'm sure you guys know this, but I want to mention just in case. Whenever you have a disagreement with somebody, there's usually two ways to attack or to approach the problem. And and keep in mind that when you approach somebody about a problem, it's usually better to be nice than to not be nice. And Trump's answer to a problem is to treat it like a nail and just hammer it into submission. And the reason is that's the only tool he's got. He has absolutely no notion of finesse or diplomacy. Diplomacy takes years. I mean, you don't end a war on the back of a napkin and answer the question. In this particular case, with these particular people, uh, let me, as we celebrate over here our freedom, think about the guys that Trump left behind in Iran and the entire Middle East. All those guys were looking to the U.S. with Israel to eliminate how can I put this? The orthodox religious thoughts that prevent countries from advancing, which is why you had the Ayatollahs. What some woman got sentenced to 74 lashes for not performing with a hijab or headscarf. I mean, the religious police guys, and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and Dubai, they're all religious and all that. But they're trying to modernize and have and offer the kids a decent life and their citizens a decent life. And then you got Iran arming Hezbollah, and and what do? They attack these guys when Trump sells them out. And what's Israel left to do? You go it alone. And I can never ever justify the scale of destruction that Israel did to the Palestinians. Uh, but there's you have to keep things. Remember the historical sequence, and traditionally, the Palestinians were no, were just kind of political pawns in the game of the Middle East. The Saudis would claim righteous indignation at the treatment of the Palestinians, but never ever offered to help themselves. And it worked for a long time. And then people get a little older, and eventually, let's face it, when you have an organization whose state's hard to cause for your destruction, it's really hard to live in peace and harmony. And in this case, it was hard to live in peace and harmony and have a music festival on that October 7th. Uh, but I'm going to tell you that when you have a people that have become so close to su- suffering genocide, that you might want to think twice before you murder a lot of them or rape them or kill them or torture, whatever it is. Um, the Palestinians knew, or the leadership, Hamas knew what was coming. I don't, they may have misjudged the degree a little bit, but they knew there was going to be this was going to be a big deal in Israel, and it was, and there were no, you know, there's only been losers ever since, and it's really appropriate that among the losers you have Trump in there with Kushner and Wickoff wanting to make a seaside resort out of coastal Palestine to match the one his daughter wants to do on that private island reserve in Albania. And guys, I'm gonna tell you, I only know one Albanian, and there's lots of Albanian gangs that are like up in Humboldt County, up in the redwoods, up in the pot growing part of California. Uh, yeah, I don't know how that started, but somebody mentioned to me the other day. Uh, so anyway, back to the birthday. Are you guys gonna have a cookout? I hope someone's gonna have one. How about a little stock car racing? Yeah, I think it's what, Darlington 400? Is that the Firecracker 400 that they have in Darlington, which is kind of near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina? And if I'm not mistaken, I think Darlington's a fairly short track. I think it's less than a mile. And I I read somewhere about that it's like paved over oyster shells, and that as the race progresses and as the track surface deteriorates, you get these bits of oyster shells poking up, and God knows what that does for your traction. It does zero for your predictability. Uh, but yeah, imagine just sitting back and watching a NASCAR race and drinking a Budweiser and cooking a hamburger, or a hot dog, or whatever you do, salmon on the grill. Uh, yeah, I don't. I'm kind of curious to see how people celebrate. And one not long ago, we had the Beach Boys and a really stunning fireworks show from the mall, and everybody was just Americans. But Trump was never about America. That's why he helps the red states and screws the blue states. As short sighted as that, and that's what he does. And that old Oprah Winfrey thing about when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. We knew all this. He told you. He and Kamala told us. When I go into office, I will be there with a to-do list. When he goes in, he'll be there with a retribution list. And which would have been more productive for the country, for the citizens? Well, I think we know, and I think we know what that Trump chose to go in the opposite direction. Okay, so let's. I got kind of off on a tangent with the fees that Iran stands to start collecting. And how about now? We got a little more tension. China is having a fairly involved chat with Japan about Taiwan. Of course, everyone wants Taiwan to be independent. China says it's a runaway province and it's our runaway province and don't get in the way. And, of course, these guys are fairly serious. I mean, China already says told Japan you can't sell your fish here. We're gonna be really careful what we send you and what we buy. There's a new sheriff in town, and already there's China's cut down the number of flights to Taiwan, and they've those little academic co-ventures they have, those are way down. China's already upon screws, and now they've stepped it up to the absolute crucial end game, and they're waging war with rare earths. And if I'm not mistaken, they have put provisions in their sales, whatever it is, that in the event this rare earth is used in any bomb making destructive device, it triggers some bad consequences. Uh, so yeah, think about that. Is that not the height of economic warfare? Rare earths. Is that going to determine control of the earth? Well, certainly, it certainly have something to say about the influence, and it's not going to be a quick deal either. And I will tell you a little quick Taiwan story. I had to go to Office Depot the other day, and I needed some of those brown envelopes. So I went in and found the guy and said, "Excuse me, but do you guys have any of those big brown envelopes? You know what I mean?" And the guy says, "Oh, you mean you want manila envelopes?" I'm like, "I don't care if they're from Taiwan, pal. I just want a big brown envelope." So you may or may not think that was funny. The person mildly laughed, so we can assume that he either didn't think it was funny or had heard it like one too many times. Okay, and while we're kind of trying to wrap up here, how about Zelensky in Ukraine? Their drones are hitting Moscow itself. I mean, how cool is that? Uh, you know, does David beat Goliath? Well, David may beat Goliath, but he ain't gonna beat him a whole lot. It might be what 1 out of 10, 1 out of 100. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we are on the verge of a Russian collapse, which would kind of parallel the Donald Trump collapse in Iran. But when the Russian military turns around and starts walking home, it's over. And I think we're just about there. That thing about you can only fool some of the people some of the time, and or all the people all the time, whatever it is. And when you rule a nation like Putin does, the newspapers are arms of the state. They say what Putin wants to say, and it's propaganda. And after years and years of claiming things are going well, their noble troops are doing great work, people are starting to see people not come home. And some of the ones that come home look nothing like they did before. Much less the post traumatic stress problem. Can you imagine just the trauma of seeing your fellow soldiers, your fellow mates just get destroyed? I mean, there are limbs everywhere. Just you know, the horror of the injuries are not seen until these injured soldiers get back home, if they do at all. And Moscow's lost over 1 million men, and God knows how many really bright people laughed when they saw the handwriting on the wall. And it's just in a way you gotta. Biden warned Zelensky. He told him, oh, they'll never do it. They'll never do it. You know, Biden was right. Biden was clearly right. And I think I think it's fairly provable that Biden was way more right than Trump ever was. I'm still trying to figure out a thing he's been right on. But my granddad always told me this: the bigger the man, the more humble he is. And a big man will admit his mistake, and a small man never will. And what's Trump do when he makes a mistake? He doubles down on it. And I mean, he always chooses the stupidest course of action. Whatever it is, the answer is always escalated. or hit it harder. And that's what I mean about when the only tool you have is a hammer. You treat everything like a nail and just try to beat it into submission. And they're human uh, characteristics or traits that some of us have. And I think it's called like being tactful and graceful and diplomatic and concerned and empathetic and just kind of being a warm, caring, sensitive human being, which I clearly believe Joe Biden was and is. And I think Kamala Harris is largely that way. I think Gavin Newsom is largely that way. Uh, and as a general proposition, we do have better candidates. Our Democratic candidates do better represent the values that people want to see perpetuated in this democracy, such as it is. It'd be awfully nice to get and this, I'm hoping this election does this. I want this to be the election that really makes us break out of the antipathy that people have towards voting. I would like to make I'd like to start 2026, but we really need to get is it that hard to get 60% of the people to vote? Maybe 70%? Is it that hard? I mean, these days, don't you just have to fill it out and drop it back in the mailbox? And even if you don't know the candidates, ask around. If you don't want to ask around, just hit the one with the D by it. It's substantially more likely you'll get a candidate who will serve your interests better with the D than with the R. And I think we have enough proof of that. Uh, and like I said, it's and let's not forget what our birthdays mean. You have to remember the good and the bad. And when Trump tries to sanitize mentions of slavery in the Smithsonian or at a national park, that's nothing short of censorship. It's a dark chapter in American history, but we can't hide it either. And Trump's one of those out of sight, out of mind guys. But again, he's wrong. And as if slavery wasn't bad enough, there was Jim Crow. And I mean, the fact that we didn't have a Civil Rights Voting Act until 1965. I mean, I could go back over the injustices that African Americans have suffered here, and I said there's just, what do you say between that and the way they were treated and the way we hunted the Native Americans like animals. I mean, we've got a few dark chapters here, but we try to ultimately do the right thing. And I think it's Winston Churchill back in World War II said something like, Americans will usually, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've done everything else. And, we can't keep on having this Pollyanna attitude that everything will work out for the better. It may not. The bad guys win too. We can't, everybody's under this la-di-da assumption that the good guys always win. Well, I hate to tell you, but, the good guys don't always win. And it's really bad. Think about the old West. We had the crooked sheriff who ran the crooked town, right? Well, ultimately they got a decent person in there, but it was bad for a long time. A lot of people's lives were miserable. And I think there's again, as a Democrat, as a broad proposition, Democrats are more likely to be in tune with what you and I consider important. And I think that clearly our standing in the world has been diminished, and we can't. While this may be a 250th birthday celebration, I think it rightfully deserves to be a subdued vacation, a subdued celebration. We can, we can paper over whatever it is with fireworks displays and flyovers and all that. But Trump has brought some how can I put this, some destructive aspects to the government, and as about he's like the chief in charge of destruction. So, guys, my voice is starting to go, but right at an hour, and when I can't go longer, I do. But yeah, my throat just I say goes about an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and bail out, and we'll chat with you again. We'll look forward to it tomorrow, and just to make sure you remember, I thought I would redo, ladies and gentlemen, Yankee Doodle. So, guys, how about that? I thought I'd leave you a little up note with Yankee Doodle. And take care, stay well. We will see you tomorrow afternoon at noon time. And you know what we say at Moxie Radio Network when we get ready to sign off, don't you? I always forget, but I think it might be something like, Roger, welcome